Good evening. Thanks for joining us on this evening's edition of Fine Print. I'm Molly Gambhir. Leaders of the world's two biggest economies, US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. At one point, they said they were friends. But where does that equation stand now? The US President says maybe Xi Jinping is not his friend anymore. Take a listen in to what Donald Trump said.
I think that we are able to, and maybe he's not anymore. I'll be honest with you. I think we had a very good friendship. I think we had a very good relationship. We understand each other. They are doing studies on Donald Trump. They're trying to figure it all out because this has never happened to them before. It's never happened. Think of it. You've covered very well. You've never seen this happen. They're having big problems. I don't want them to have problems, but they got to make a fair deal, just like Canada's got to make a fair deal. I believe that he and I have a very good chemistry together. And I can tell you that about many leaders. I can also tell you a few where I don't feel I'll ever have a chemistry with them. I don't want to have a chemistry with them.
Over the next few minutes, we are telling you why the US and China are on the warpath and why it is not good news for the world. United States and China are locked in a bitter trade battle. The US has imposed sanctions on Chinese imports. China has imposed counter-sanctions. And now Washington has opened up a new front against Beijing. At the United Nations Security Council meeting, Donald Trump accused China of meddling in America's democratic process. The US president said that Beijing is interfering in the midterm polls slated for November this year in America. Trump added that China wanted him to lose because he had challenged the Asian superpower on trade.
Regrettably, we found that China has been attempting to interfere in our upcoming 2018 election, coming up in November, against my administration. They do not want me or us to win because I am the first president ever to challenge China on trade. And we are winning on trade. We are winning at every level. We don't want them to meddle or interfere in our upcoming election.
China has reacted, refuting the allegations. In fact, China said everyone knows which country interferes in the internal matters of the other countries. Goes without saying, China's jibe was directed at the United States. Take a listen in for yourself.
China has always adhered to the policy of non-interference in internal affairs of other countries. It is a tradition of China's foreign policy that has won widespread praise from the international community. We did not and will not interfere in the internal affairs of any country, and we do not accept any groundless accusations made against China. We also urge other countries to follow the principles of the UN Charter, which forbids interference in any nation's internal affairs.
Remember, Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei and the Philippines all have competing territorial claims over the South China Sea. Another big reason why Trump and Xi are no longer friends. China considers Taiwan its own province. It has not ruled out using force against Taiwan. In fact, China is on a mission to snatch the handful of friends that Taiwan has. And the US, though it endorses the One China policy, is selling arms to Taiwan. It has been doing this for years. But the recent move to sell $330 million defense equipment to Taiwan has angered the Chinese. The ongoing trade face-off and now the election meddling charge are enough to derail any possible reconciliation between the world's two biggest economies. And if the trade war escalates further, repercussions will be felt worldwide. But then Donald Trump has been known for poking enemies and friends alike and then bringing them on to the negotiating table. In fact, Trump says China is studying the very, very large brain that he has, quote unquote. And who knows what Donald Trump's very, very large brain makes him do next. Joining us for more on that from Hong Kong is Andrew K.P. Leung, international and independent strategist. Donald Trump claims that China wants him to lose in these midterm elections. Why would China want that, A? And what do you make of that election meddling charge, Andrew?
Well, this is really turning the table on the, turning the boot on the other foot. because if you see what's happening, United States and China have been very, very close trading partners. I mean, with China in the old days exporting the cheap goods and benefiting American consumers, whereas China earning all this revenue and invested in the U.S. currencies, in the U.S. The market. So this is a beneficial relationship on both sides, but this kind of relationship is no longer sustainable. On the one hand, China now feels that it's getting only the crumbs from the table, in the sense that how much money, for example, China has been making from a iPhone. It's only $8.46 US. That's the amount China's making. So this kind of profits no longer can sustain the growing economy, the upgrading of China's technologies. And of course, with China's greater capacities in the military and its trade relationship with the rest of the world, China's influence has been growing. So whereas in the old days, it benefited the United States to bring China over to the global trading systems, for example, China's entry into the WTO and so on and so forth, because China is not competing with the United States in high technology. But now China is now beginning to grow this technology with the Make in China 2025. It's again putting a lot of emphasis and resources in the developing capacities that would directly to threaten Americans' lunch. So the United States feel that now, wow, with the rising China, China is eating our lunch, and that's why the whole relationship has been upended. Now, coming back to the accusation that China is now targeting the midterm elections, that's based on the recent publication or paid advertisements in newspapers in Donald Trump's supporting states, in the rural states, explaining what this trade war is all about. But obviously, China cannot retaliate dollar for dollar in this trade war, because China exports 500 billion US dollars of goods to the United States, whereas the United States only exports 150 billion. So China cannot retaliate dollar for dollar, and can only use the kind of media warfare, as it were, targeting Trump's support states, so as to balance this kind of tit-tat kind of confrontation. But of course, it is not in China's interest, or in fact, it's not in the interest of both countries for this trade war to last forever. But what we are seeing is a rivalry, a geopolitical rivalry, as you pointed out earlier. It's not just the trade, it's the South China Sea, it's also China's perceived influence. So We're seeing the world order, previously dominated by the United States, is being challenged by the rising China, and this is what's happening.
Interesting that you mentioned that, because as we also outlined, the trade war between the US and China intensifying, the two economic superpowers targeting each other with their biggest round of tariffs yet. And these moves, as Andrew also pointed out, are a significant escalation in that growing conflict between the world's top two economies. The measures are meant to punish China for what the Trump government says are unfair trade practices. Andrew, as that report detailed, the trade war a direct threat to the global supply chains. In fact, half of what China sells to the United States is now subject to tariffs. Can China afford to retaliate?
Hello? Hello?
Andrew, if my voice is going through to you?
Well, you're asking me, right? As I said before, China cannot afford to, or not afford, cannot simply retaliate dollar for dollar, because there is a huge imbalance in the amount of trade. China exports 500 billion and only imports 150. So there is no way that China can retaliate dollar for dollar. But China can retaliate by other means. As I was saying before, I mean, this advertisement targeting in the President Trump's support base in the agricultural states is one tactic. The other thing, of course, is putting pressure on American businesses operating in China. And of course, China, in the last resort, controls 95% of the world's rare earths. These rare earths are essential for various equipments, including pharmaceutical equipment, even including military equipment. So I think China holds a number of weapons. But on the other hand, this tit-for-tat kind of retaliation is in nobody's interest. America is likely to be hurt as well because the consumers would have to pay up more for alternative imports. And it's not always possible to replace this huge import from China. And also, a lot of the goods exported from China includes components made in the United States.
Right.
So I think that this is a trade war that both sides cannot hope to win entirely. But of course, as I said, this trade war is only tip of an iceberg of a 360 degrees pushback against China. And some of the worries are genuine and are shared by the European Union as well, that China has been a little bit unfair in some of its trade practices. China is not opening up its market wide enough, and is subsidizing huge companies in areas that directly compete with the United States. So I think that it's also in China's interest to open up its market, and that China has already been doing even before the trade war. But I think that to resolve this trade war is not just both sides coming to the table, sign a piece of agreement. It's likely to last for a very, very long time because we are talking about a rivalry for global power.
Indeed, and will have far-reaching implications. We're going to leave it there for the moment, though. Andrew, thanks very much indeed for elaborating for our viewers the various aspects of that escalating war of words between the United States and China. We'll keep a close eye on those updates.